So this is Brendan and JJ talk about video games, where we basically play through a video game and then we talk about its developments and its space in the water as a whole. And the game we've chosen, or I've chosen, and I dragged Brendan along to play, is the original Far Cry, Far Cry 1, which is a very interesting spot in Ubisoft's history, I think it would be fair to say. And it plays kind of a pivotal role in their eventual rise and downfall. And to start off, Brendan, what did you think of Far Cry 1?
A game that's 20 years old, way ahead of its time.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta say, many people hear Far Cry and they think of Ubisoft Montreal and the work they did. But the inception is actually by Crytek, who later wanted to make the Crisis games, and is currently working on Hunt Showdown. And yeah, I think I have to agree, for a 20-year-old game, it's held up amazingly well. But I kind of see that as Crytek's future-proofing policies in a way, if that makes sense, with the engine.
Kind of. I'm not just talking about looks here. Like, it does look good for a 20-year-old game, but it also feels good.
That is
A
true,
lot
yeah.
of the mechanics and ways things are in the game feel like they could have been released last year.
Yeah, as one of those sort of throwback shooters. A lot of games trying to replicate the style of the old games back then actually changed quite a lot. That wouldn't be possible. But it's weird playing a game that is actually genuinely made 20 years ago. That feels like a game that's made today, trying to replicate games 20 years ago.
Like, if it was now, it'd be like a
Yeah.
indie studio game, but
Yeah.
still.
I mean, that gets into the kind of unique development of Far Cry in itself, and why it's so interesting that Ubisoft sort of took it, because it essentially was a indie game in a way, when it started the conception from Crytek itself. They just stepped in to help with the funding. But then on the other hand, Crytek's engine, CryEngine, is absolutely amazing. I think that's what a lot of the game is based on. Like, they just have this really good engine where shooting and lighting and graphics look amazing, and then they're just basically prodding that engine. So yeah, what aspects of the game do you think, well, it did exceptionally well compared to other games, especially at the time?
Playing through it, I encountered a very interesting thing, and the rope bridges in the game, and I fell off one. Not because I just went over the edge of it, but because one of the enemies, maybe my own bullet, hit the rope holding it up, and it
Yeah.
tilted. The
I-
fact that I could shoot down a rope bridge.
It is quite amazing how much the physics and destructibility in that aspects they managed to cram in this game at that time.
Like, that just blew my mind. Like, you'd think of the environment as fairly static in games. Like,
Yeah,
fairly static.
especially today as well, with these sort of campaigns, or at least a couple of years ago, these like 5 hour, 6 hour campaigns where it's just shooting through corridors.
Yeah, and the fact that the rope bridge could literally be shot out from under me.
Did
That
you,
was.
did you get to the bit on top of the aircraft carrier?
Yeah, it's that. That
Yeah. That's what because I shot a helicopter down and it crashed into the rope ship, and then I was like, I thought it was gonna look funny that the helicopter on top of the rope bridge, but it just kind of went through it.
One caveat is I found the game fairly different. I like stunt games. I like quiet and slow, deliberate action, and it's not that type of game.
I think it really wanted to be, and I just don't think it had the. It just didn't have it in the engine to properly do stuff.
No, like you are very far away from an enemy, you hack at one, and boom, you're
Yeah.
surrounded.
Also,
And
I found a lot myself that vegetation is kind of completely pointless sometimes,
yeah,
where they just see completely through it.
so I did play the game, part of it recently this evening with cheats on.
Ooh,
Basically, give myself infinite health.
I
That
did,
helped immensely.
yeah, I did not experience that. Like, um, one of the main issues I've had is that it feels so modern in ways, but it feels like it's being held back by the sort of traditions at the time. And one of those I think is majorly medkits. Um,
Yeah.
what when you it's I know it's hard in retrospect, but when you see what comes later with the amazing healing system that Far Cry is kind of known for, it would have just made the game so much better.
That's actually what got me double guessing because you know the vegetation in the later games where you
Yes,
to heal yourself, most of that is there.
yeah,
The big red bushes, they're there.
it is. It is kind of wild how much Ubisoft
Oh,
actually takes from this game. Like, um, it is kind of known to like Far Cry fans, like just like it's basically a different series, but they really do iterate it a lot.
mm. There was other stuff like alternate paths. It's, as you were saying before we started playing it, fairly linear, but they do give you alternative paths a fair few times if you
Yeah,
know where to look.
and I really gotta praise this sort of game because Ubisoft I think is very much right now known for its repetitive open worlds, and this is a way to do open environments in a structured linear story that I think is very underutilized. I know at the time what they wanted is a true open world, but the engine couldn't handle, or PCs couldn't handle a vast island, so they split it up to multiple. But there's one where you go to like you start at the beach and you go all the way top to the mountain, and then like boats come in landing from the beach, and it's just like taking place on this like pretty large island. And even today, I would be pretty amazed if that was in like the latest Call of Duty.
Mm. Like
Um,
the scale of it, the fact that
yeah.
you look at a previous part and see a landmark where you were at,
Mm.
that's cool.
And I sort of question, is there a lot of lessons in Far Cry that Ubisoft could take from now? Like, if the next Far Cry was a semi-open linear story, would that be the innovation that could be a really good thing? Like,
There's new articles about how the innovation they're bringing is a time limit.
ooh,
Yeah,
that could be an interesting thing.
yeah,
Um,
because, well, it's gonna be my biggest enemy because I tend to go off and just explore
yeah,
Skyrim
I'm the
style.
same. I'm the same. But like games like what was it called? Oh, the one where you're fighting zombies in a shopping mall. Where you
Right?
no, it's the name eludes me. A flash on the screen there, but it basically it's like a pretty much an open world zombie hunting game where you have to like just find people and rescue it, but you need to get out within a certain time or the military just shoots it. And because it's a certain timer, every decision, everything you do is like that much more intense.
Hmm.
And I feel like that
Not
could
Left
be
4
good
Dead,
for
is it?
no, not Left 4 Dead. I'll look it up. It's an Xbox published game.
Hmm.
Mm, hasn't been around for a while. Um, but yeah,
Oh, and prone. The fact that you can go
Prone.
in prone.
Yeah, which again, when it comes to what comes afterwards, it's very weird to see that this is the game where you can go prone. When it's the one where it's like the least open world in the series. Dead Rising, that's the game. Um, but yeah, I think I genuinely I keep playing it, and it's such a weird game that Ubisoft would publish now. and I
And
think
they'd be too experimental for them.
yeah, which I think is what's so interesting about Far Cry is the fact that Ubisoft saw this and stepped in. Um, and this comes like just for the audience. This game is basically made the engine's crytek. A lot of this is just crytek's own work. But it came out in 2004, and that was sort of the rise of Ubisoft as a publishing arm away from its development. Because it also developed like its own party games, and it then started publishing others. And Far Cry was pretty much their first knockout the park. And which was I think on PC for like a good couple of years before a console version ever came out because it was just too big for consoles at the time. Really experimental. And I was reading articles, and I probably linked to it. There's a really good one on ModDB from a changer of the ways from the 24th of December 2001, and it says that the original Far Cry was a Crytek game that they dropped called Exile, which had dinosaurs. To quote, they were dropping Exile with all its aliens, dinosaurs, and everything else. Thus, they needed a new vision of their upcoming tactical shooter at the time. So it shows that this is their rendered down vision of a wild game.
And it is wild.
And it is already wild. It's heavily based on a book about mad scientists in the jungle, a Victorian one, which the name will lose me again. I had it up earlier. But yeah, it is completely off the bonkers for what you think Ubisoft would say right now.
Completely bananas.
Yeah, and would you ever think they would do anything like that again?
No.
Like,
no, they have shareholders, and shareholders demand ever increasing profits.
Yeah,
and they want reliability and stability.
it reminds me of the Soviet economy in a way, right? It doesn't
too
grow.
janky for now.
Yeah,
Too janky.
yeah. And this came out, I think, exclusively on PC at the time. They didn't know it was going to be a hit. Once it blew up, they had console versions later. But yeah, even the concept of open world games were not a big market back in the day as well. And
when did Skyrim release?
Skyrim's pretty late for how bad it bad it
yeah,
looks.
I know, but that's the game that kind of introduced many people to open world.
Looking at it there, it came out 2011, November.
It is quite a bit later.
Yeah.
Oblivion was earlier. Heck, even Fallout 3.
Yeah,
not
like
really open worlds. Like it's still segmented off.
Yeah, I played through that recently, and yeah, you can very feel much that the entire DC part, they just couldn't do an open world in 3D. This
like it'd be fantastic that way, but
yeah, I mean, I guess in this sort of regard, like it is a progenitor to many open world games, even if it's not an open world game, technically in its face.
Feels like one.
Yeah. A lot of the other open world games were RPG at the time. This is a true action open world game, which ironically wasn't started by Ubisoft, but ended up becoming Ubisoft's motto.
The action feels good.
Yeah.
Explosions,
Yeah, I gotta say, the sound effects in this game are pretty good as well. I really enjoy that when your character gets hit, he yells.
It's a small thing. Like there's a indie game space puzzle one a few years, like a year or two ago that I played. Very nice gameplay. But what felt really off-putting about it was when you moved forward, you made no sound. You just glided. And it was that tiny little piece of footsteps that was missing. It's really small details that count.
Yeah, and I think that's what this is so revolutionary, because we'll get into the story just a tad bit later, but the story is pretty light. the missions are pretty unstructured, but it's just the small details in the gunplay, the sounds, the visuals, all those that I feel like that's what makes this game very special. And to me, what makes Far Cry special as a whole, but that's a debate for when if we get to later games, what is Far Cry anymore and what isn't. But yeah, I think, especially when you see Crysis, crytek seems to be very focused on the details, which Ubisoft has sort of taken when it comes to this series.
The fact that a lot of background sound is radios,
Yeah.
and you can shoot them to turn them off.
Again, this might seem like this is 2004 we're talking about, to have that foresight. Like, it's one of the progenitors of these sort of things.
And it's audio. The audio, directional audio was good.
It's pretty amazing, yeah.
Granted that the enemy's audio is too good and they call their friends way too fast, but
yeah. The stealth is a pretty bad issue in this. I feel like they just didn't have the technology, or I wouldn't say the technology. I think just didn't have the time to fine tune it. Which
no,
they tell you to stealth at the start, but really you have to go guns blazing.
yeah, which is kind of strange since this came out in 2004, and I do have a game in mind for next time.
Oh yeah.
It came out in 1998.
Oh, okay, yeah. We could definitely make this a thing where I suggest a game, you suggest a game, and we just torture each other for the end of time. That would be pretty fun actually, because I got some up the sleeve. But I will say, as two of my favorite games are Crysis and Far Cry 2, and I will say this feels like genuinely like the grandfather of it, and in a very weird way. And I think when you see what Crytek did with Crysis, do you think that if it was released later it would end up like that, or do you think
I kind of feel that they learned lessons.
Yeah.
From it. A lot of lessons, some what to do and some what not to do.
Yeah.
Some of the enemies felt like bullet sponges. You don't really get that feeling too much in Crysis.
No. And the abilities change up. The enemies have abilities as well that change it up quite a lot as well.
Yeah. That and a Crysis looks goddamn amazing.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point. That's what it's known for.
Apparently that the demo that you can play at the main menu, if you don't play it, it just goes through the island, is what basically sold this game to people. And I can see that because this game looks so good and was so reactive in a way that basically is what got Crytek picked up from Ubisoft. Which is interesting to see now, because to us it looks pretty plain. But
not really. Like, there's a few sections where if you look at the distance, not up close stuff, because up close stuff will look,
yeah,
it's age. But the stuff far away, you could mistake it for Far Cry 6 in some places.
Really, I haven't played Far Cry 6, but I can see that.
It's a similar enough setting.
I was truly blown away at the start of the game by how big that first section is, actually.
Oh god, yeah.
CryEngine is made with like magic and space dust, because it has consistently produced really good looking games.
Exceptional, like just breaking your concept of what is possible.
Yeah. I think that's great. A great explanation for Far Cry 1 as a whole is if I was playing this in 2004 on my computer, I would be like, wow, this feels like a next step in video games. Which is the complete opposite reaction I feel like most people have when they play Ubisoft games nowadays.
Yeah, Ubisoft does stick to a formula now, and that has made it stale.
Yeah, and sort of the main essence that I feel like getting out of this game is that, oh my god, Ubisoft took a massive chance and took a really weird game and published it, and they saw the glimpse in it, and I really just hope that people take from this is that they go and try Far Cry 1 and see that, oh my god, Ubisoft published something that is just weird. Like, it's just weird.
How much did it cost you now?
I can look it up here. What the most I did try to look up the development of Far Cry 1. I think it's a combination of buried with time, the information, and the sort of the Far Cry, the name has become, you know, a sort of bigger thing that Far Cry 1 itself. Like, you look up just Far Cry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it basically starts with a tech demo that Crytek did called Exile Dinosaur Island, and there's a video of it, and I'll post it in the description, which is basically an island where it comes with it, and yeah, and so I think that cost a lot, but that was kind of the basis of it. I'm looking at the budget now. So basically, Crytek themselves footed a lot of the bill. Before going it, so so the budget was actually 30 million. Which
Not too much.
Never mind, that's the film. I was looking at it, yeah, because I saw the box office and I was like, what? Yeah, we'll get to the film. We'll get to the film at some point. Yeah, you see.
Next year.
Yeah, well, if a single person listens to the podcast, we'll go into great detail what we think about the film. Yeah, I think the numbers were kept in-house. I know that it sold 2.5 million units. It sold 700,000 units within the first 4 months, and yeah, it was a very big success, and basically just on PC, which was the biggest thing about this, because it couldn't play on anything else at the time. It got HD remasters on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and it got basically remakes made for consoles. But the first game, Far Cry 1 itself, could only be played on PC.
That's the one that we played, right?
Yeah.
The 32-bit game.
Yeah. They all have different names, like Far Cry Predator, Far Cry Survival. They basically are their own stories, and they have sequels to that story. So there is a Far Cry 2, basically, but it's a sequel to the first game, and then you have Far Cry 2.
Would they ever... So 2 is sequel to this.
It's...
And... none of the others pick up the trade, essentially.
2 doesn't really have... 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, if you're listening. Far Cry 2 is my self-exception. At one point, I referred myself only to the Jackal and recorded quotes from him. 2 is technically a prequel, but that was confirmed in like 2021 by a developer after years of fan speculation. 2 it basically has nothing. It has nothing to do with anything really. It just sort of just feels like a normal conflict. And then the rest of the games, yeah, nothing, no indication of any sort of plot at all with this.
Because it'd be really interesting if the enemies from this game suddenly popped up in a future game.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Far Cry has basically, it just has like normal mercenaries, and then it has like super mutants towards the end of the game. And yeah, they never come up at all. Ever again. No sort of fantastical elements come up until Far Cry Blood Dragon. I think the wildest it ever gets is Far Cry 5 with the drugs. But
5 is just...
yeah,
mind breaking.
Comparing this to 5, you know, it may have a very generic story, but it just has a singular vision. Like, you see someone wanted to, okay, I really want to push the limits of this, and Far Cry 5 is like, okay, I want to make the most Far Cry game ever, what does this series is known for, and we're gonna put it in, and we're gonna destructure it so people just do whatever they want. And
rednecks. Just
red,
rednecks.
yeah, and it's so different, just completely different.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like the later games.
Yeah, and even just cooperating with Crytek, which I don't think we'll ever see from Ubisoft ever again, rather than keeping it in-house, is such a weird move that we wouldn't even consider now.
Yeah.
And just seeing what the new Ubisoft games are coming out, I feel like if they did partner up with another studio, we could see some really interesting thing coming out of really good franchises.
Or not. A lot of stuff, because it's big money now, means that they want reliable,
Yeah.
not experimental.
And what we're seeing with Far Cry is a very ambitious Ubisoft. A very wanting to grow.
And then we also see that Crytek later on, they also are ambitious as fuck.
With Crysis especially.
Yeah. Crysis 2, I've got my own complaints about that.
Me too. People, side tangent though, people who tend to play on console prefer Crysis 2, because it's the first one on Crysis, and then they go play Crysis 1. And people who play on PC tend to like Crysis 1 and don't like Crysis 2, which is a very funny thing I've noticed.
But in my case, Crysis 2 is just NVIDIA fuckery.
Yeah. Which is how Far Cry is supposedly made, like how this was all possible back in the day. Yeah, going through this article, part 1.2, they do talk about how the engine was basically like working quite heavily with NVIDIA to produce this.
And then in the manual, we also have AMD CPU being recommended. Which is an interesting mix.
And
because that was a time when AMD was king. Like, absolutely, the Athlon line of CPUs, amazing. Like, absolutely amazing. It was when Intel was the space heater. They're now back to it, but they also, Intel after that did anti-competitive shit and vibes. Folks, and took the crown. And also benchmarks.
Yeah, and AMD has been sort of struggling ever since. Not struggling, but not really getting above dominance. I mean, you can see in the specs for the minimum and recommended specs is that it's all AMD. But yeah, getting to the manual, it's so we're playing the Steam release, both of us. I tried actually getting the GOG release because I just kind of preferred these games on GOG. But for some reason it was taken down. It was on their website, but it wasn't on the launcher. But it came with the manual, and Brendan, I want your thoughts on the manual first before I rant about how I missed them so much.
It has a manual.
It has a manual, and it's great.
Well, it's a small one, and it's a black and white scan, but still better than nothing.
I can see this actually being black and white back in the day. Going through a lot of the old Wii games I used to have with the manuals, a lot of them were just in black and white to save money.
Oh, but this one looks like it had color.
That could be true, yeah.
Just the shading and whatnot, it feels like it had
color. Yeah, you're definitely right, because there's a lot of... It has every gun in the game, every every item you can pick up.
The fact that it has it is just nice, and it has the multiplayer stuff as well.
Yeah, which is an aspect of the game we can't really examine, but from what I remember back in the day, the TIE shooting and the open maps and the sort of vehicles, which we haven't got into, made it a very nice shooter before like a lot of that sort of sandbox just came to PC, which now I think about it, a lot of it hasn't in a sort of arcadey way, but it was pretty popular for its day, the multiplayer. Again, this is 2004 PC multiplayer, so it wasn't the record-breaking numbers we see now, but it was still pretty popular and it was still pretty enjoyed, and I can see why from its description.
But yeah, the fact that it has a manual is a big thing.
Yeah.
One of the last manuals I actually have in person are the Pokemon ones.
Oh, that's great. I bet even a lot of the PlayStation 4 games I've got have no manuals.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
You don't even get the CDs in the boxes now.
Yeah, that's physical releases of digital only games. Like I saw a physical release of Fortnite in a store once, and I was
What?
almost in tears. Yeah, you had to pay €20 for Fortnite. A game that's constantly updated, so that cartridge or disc is basically redundant within like 3 months if you don't want to download it. But I will recommend, if you do think about picking up this game after our pretty, I wouldn't say glowing reviews, but pretty positive attitude towards the game, is to please read the introduction and the manual. This is a game for 2004. They expect you to read the manual to know what's going on. Otherwise, the first cutscene will make no sense to you.
Even still, it's a psychedelic dream.
Yes, I think that's something we must show as the cutscenes, because oh my god, this game is 2004 true and true, and I love it.
And I'm so glad it's not later, because then we'd have the piss filter on it.
Yeah, it's very bright, it's very atmospheric, it's that positive sort of saturation you associate with the 2000s. Talking
It's
about
not-
piss filter, we'll get to Far Cry 2, but the only mod I ever have in Far Cry 2 is to remove the piss filter. And the game looks so much better because of it.
There's also one for Fallout 3.
Yeah, don't worry. That I guess that's the moldy piss filter because it's a green tint.
I know, but the same idea.
There's
And
even one for New
again,
Vegas. It's an
that-
orange tint.
Yeah, they look so good without it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what crack they were serving in the late 2000s.
A lot of it.
But piss filters was like the absolute pinnacle of gaming, which is very nice that it doesn't have it here.
It's how you know the era.
Yeah, and they also the exaggerated character models, the Tomb Raider-esque physique of most people. It's very nice if you want to go back or experience games from that era.
And it is hard though.
It is very hard, yeah.
And it is why I have cheats on, because I don't have time to
Yeah, I think again.
grind through it.
There's been multiple sections where I had to just remember where the enemies were point by point, perfect pin accuracy headshots, because I'm just low on health and there's no way to regenerate it. I have to just keep pushing to the next medkit. It happens again and again and again, and because the walls are so open, like you could be taking a route that takes you like around 10 different enemies to where the next checkpoint is, or you can run directly towards it. And because it doesn't really know where it goes, it feels like they haven't sorted out how to do that. It feels like they're sticking with tradition like Medal of Honor and stuff like that, where it's very, very closely followed where you can go. So they put medkits appropriately in checkpoints.
And also the fact that damn it. Nah, it's just gone from my head.
No! No!
Ah.
But it's very funny that Ubisoft and Crytek both rectify that issue straight away in their next follow-ups. Crisis comes out 2007, if I remember, which is 1 year before Far Cry 2. But already in the consoles version, they have regenerative health. Maybe because of Halo?
Far Cry.
For Far Cry, yeah. For the consoles versions of... Some of them do, yeah. There's so many. There's so many consoles versions of Far Cry 1.
What was the first game that had regenerative health?
I don't know the first game that had regenerative health, but the first game that popularized it was Halo.
Because I
Um,
know Halo wasn't the first.
Halo was definitely not the first, no, but it's definitely the one that, like, yeah, basically popularized it in a lot of games. And it comes out around the same time.
Mm.
Yeah, 2001.
Same time.
And then it comes to computers in 2003, which
Mm.
actually was a bit earlier than I thought. My lord.
Yeah.
We're getting old.
That was before you were born.
That is true, but not too much before I was born. But I have played Halo, yeah. Jesus, yeah. Um, God, yeah. So for 20,
Another game series that's gone.
yeah.
Not shell of its former self.
Again, it's if they just went back to Ubisoft approach to Far Cry, I think it would be really good. Um, which is the miracle of this. I suppose not really a miracle. It was how the gaming industry was, but it's just how fresh, unique it feels today.
Music is good.
Music is really good.
That's the one thing I do remember really well from Halo.
Yes,
Music just sticks in your head. That beat.
I think Halo is a lot better in music than Far Cry, but Far Cry still does it really well.
Yeah. Like,
It's,
not perfect, but Halo is just boom.
I don't know if you've ever had the diegetic music where they start shooting at you and then you hear the music kick in and then they stop shooting at you and then they start shooting you again and the music kicks in.
Yeah.
I had that a couple of times. That was pretty nice. That it wasn't playing until everyone was dead. Which, side tangent, is my biggest fucking problem with The Last of Us Part 2. Is that you know the enemies are still alive because the music's still blaring, and as soon as they're dead, the music stops. But yeah, saying again that the game is 20 years old, I kind of just
quietens down after a while.
Yeah,
Then you go, no.
it just stops in Last of Us 2.
Because if the music would just quietly die down, even with enemies still alive, you would have the personal intention of, are they dead? Are they not?
Yeah,
You don't know.
which Far Cry 1 does really well, and which is a problem in later Far Cry games. And one of the things I found very interesting is that this game has binoculars, but it tags enemies in a completely different way than any of the other Far Cry games. Because when you tag an enemy, you tag them through the binoculars, so you know where their positions are when you're using the binoculars. But when you don't use binoculars, you can't see them anymore, which is kind of the opposite of how it worked in Far Cry 3 post.
Every other,
Yeah.
But the thing is, that kind of makes sense. You don't have a cybernetic eye. You don't have guard mode, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, that feature even remains in Far Cry Primal.
Primal is another game.
Primal is definitely a game we should talk about at some point. I don't know if I can bring myself to play it again, but it's good.
Oh, I really like it because it's a definite break from the rest.
Yeah, but in a way though that you can see Ubisoft's formula still buying at it.
You can see that someone tried new stuff in it.
Yeah. Tried under the new regime.
Didn't all come out as such, but that was based on a map of 4, wasn't it?
Yeah. Which if they were straight up on would probably be a lot better because they did have a lot of backlash on that.
And then in 5 they said, yeah, this is built off the map of it.
Which I think is a lot better. Just open up of it.
And thematically it works really well. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that it's a new map, it's the same map but later.
Far Cry New Dawn is like one of the few Far Cry games I haven't played, and I really should get around to doing it.
It is good.
But yeah,
Takes the crazy of 5 and just amps it up to max.
which is kind of what is needed in 5. Because yeah, a lot of that game. I've played 5 probably the most because the co-op's really good in 5. But it's definitely, I'm already bored of it, and I kind of play a couple of the other Far Cry games again and again. And
I'd say, talking about 5, the one thing I kind of miss in this is just the random events happening.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if you're on 5, you can sit down, and stuff will happen. It will happen without a convoy will come along. It will get attacked. You can help them or not. It may blow up. And the
yeah,
ones may just run out to the woods and attack you. Or
yeah.
a convoy. Shit happens.
Animals' lack of presence in this game is very, like, I understand it, but it is something I feel like could have added a whole new element. I guess when you get later into the game, the Trigons are meant to be like animals, but it just feels like a flood situation where you introduce a third faction.
Mm. Yeah, I kept hearing snakes, but I cannot see them.
I've seen some sort of boar animal, and that's it, and it ran away instantly. I don't think there's any animals in the game that actually attack you.
It is a fair bit different from later on.
Yeah, it's like that in 2 as well, but 2 has definitely that random element into it. In fact, I feel like 2 is frustrating to some people because it is a bit too random for them.
Yeah, 5 is just nice
Yeah,
for that kind of thing.
5 is nice, but then 5 feels like it was constrained a bit by, yeah. 5 feels like the people wanted to do a lot, and then Ubisoft told them to chuck it down a bit, or at least not even chuck it down, but expand what they had, stretched it out in a way.
Yeah,
Where
like fishing. Fishing actually worked there somewhat.
fishing was a bit. Far Cry 5, I just go out and fish sometimes.
Again, it's the contrast, the pause. And then there's an explosion of a boat halfway across a lake.
Yeah. I think this game would have been improved a lot more with fishing.
1?
Yeah.
No.
There is fishing, or NPCs can fish in the game. I guess there's no reason because there's no stores or anything. But
It's not even that, like, it's just too action focused.
yeah, that's true. Something that is when you mentioned 5 and being stretched out, I feel like this game, it succeeds kind of well in its pacing. It's batshit from the get go, and it gets just more insane. But yeah, but it does start to drag in the later levels. I feel like a lot of games at this era have the issue of the third faction coming in and just kind of messing up the gameplay, and I think Far Cry is a victim of that too. But looking at the reviews for Far Cry, a lot of give it either a 9 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. Would you still say that holds up to this day?
Yes.
Yeah?
Very well. Like, it wouldn't be my first choice of gameplay,
Yeah.
but it's enjoyable. Like, it's cut back
Like,
compared to new stuff, but
yeah. I say to people, if you want to play a corridor shooter, play Fear. It's old, but it is basically what a corridor shooter is. I would say if you like open spaces in linear campaigns, which is a very specific thing, I would say play Far Cry, which I did not think I would recommend this game because it does not get as much love from the community as it does. But I would say the same sort of recommendations. If you like that specific thing, I would say play Far Cry. But maybe find a way to mod in regenerative healing, and then it's perfect.
Yeah, I'll do as I did and just
Yeah.
go.
Put cheats on. There's no shame. There's no shame putting a cheat on for a little bit. If you're a checkpoint with no health, because there's been so many times where I've just been fucked by save. Anything else you
That's
wanna?
actually another thing is that
Yeah.
you cannot use sprint to save.
Yeah.
It's a very old school style.
It does feel like it's trying to be a Medal of Honor game,
It
but
feels, you
it's
mentioned
too
it
open.
before, but it feels like an arcade shooter.
Yeah, in a way. Much more than any other game in the series is, except for Blood Dragon, but that's going for it.
That's special.
Yeah, Blood Dragon's Blood Dragon. It's barely a Far Cry game.
But yeah, you can easily see it where you put in your 1 euro, 20 cent, 50 cent, whatever, your token, to
Yeah,
play the next one.
yeah. A lot of the missions as well are, like, they continue on, but they do feel like oh, here's this environment type of mission. Oh, here's this environment type of mission. A lot of the missions get more narrow as you go on as well, which kind of is weird because the vehicle play kind of misses in the second half. I don't know about you, but I found the vehicle play really infuriating at the start, and then really enjoyable.
Mm. The fact that it gives you fairly powerful weapons
Yeah.
is nice.
I don't know if you ever tried to use the vehicle in third person though.
Wait, you can do it in third person?
If you press F1, you can do it in third person.
Ha!
But the camera is controlled by the game. It is unusable.
Oh. That is... Why? Why?
I don't know. I started out with using it in third person, but I genuinely couldn't use it anymore. I had to go back to first person. It's the only way to aim. So yeah. So just to say the legacy of Far Cry, for instance. So we had the console versions, Far Cry Instincts for the Xbox, and then like Far Cry Predator, which is a sequel to that. No, Evolution is a sequel to Instincts, and then they're on the Wii for some reason. But yeah, there's a Far Cry Evolutions, which is a sequel of Far Cry Instincts, which is a remake of Far Cry 1 for the Xbox. Gets a remake called Far Cry Vengeance for the Wii. There is an entire like 5-6 game playlist that you can just have of different Far Cry 1 games. But yeah. So the engine, basically EA looks at Crytek after Far Cry and it's like, I want you to keep doing this, and which leads to Crysis, which is published by EA. Ubisoft somehow, like, whatever lawyers they had at Ubisoft at the time, basically held the license for Far Cry, like the name, and the IP. They had that after publishing, and a perpetual license for the CryEngine, which is where the Dunia engine comes out with, which is what they use to this day, I think. And I think I don't want to be too nostalgic, but I feel like this is sort of the situation where everyone won out of Far Cry. What do you think about Far Cry's legacy when it comes to wider gaming? Do you think it's like overlooked, or do you think it's just been a net positive?
The game itself has been overlooked. but its influence in other games is fairly undeniable.
Yeah, yeah. And the technology it pioneered in here has just led to greatness, and by greatness I mean Far Cry 2. And
Like, heck, even if you want to go about it, Far Cry 3 and Towers.
yeah, I
Like,
mean,
we wouldn't have half the style of Ubisoft games now without the first one starting things off.
in such a bombastic way as well. And something that I've always found interesting is that the Ubisoft and the series as a whole has always come back to this jungle motif. First with
Actually,
Far,
that's something I hated.
really,
And meditation doesn't hide you,
yeah,
but it hides the opponents.
yes, which is
You
something
cannot see
thankfully
them.
they got better in later games.
Yeah, god, that's what I forgot earlier. But the fact that the vegetation is just a hindrance, like it's nice enough to look at, but it is hell to go through. It does feel like a jungle where things out to get you.
Yeah, and later on when you have enemies that basically run up to you and can swing around, it gets a lot better. But then they usually have those enemies in tight corners, which kind of diminish the point. But yeah, I will say it does. I don't know, the atmosphere it has kind of gets lost and lost with the sequels, past 3 at least. In that sort of everyone's out to get you, the paranoia of it. Now, is that just because the worlds are bigger? Is another issue, but I will say it kept me at the edge of my seat like the whole time. Yeah, is there any other part you want to touch on? I feel like we've talked ourselves to death about this game. It's been about an hour.
There's a lot of stuff in it that I do wish came back. The fact
Yeah.
that bridges are destructible, that's a big. It took me a minute to realize what was going on with that. And that was surprising as heck. Though it was a bit surprising when the bridge fell, it was still rigid, the bridge part, so I could actually walk back up. So that was grand. Double mindfuck.
The amount of physics that are interactable really ramps up with Far Cry 2, and then just goes down a cliff ever since there. There's a really good video comparing the details of Far Cry 5 and Far Cry 2.
Yeah, I saw that. Other thing, the fact that you have to go prone for crates, that's a major thing.
Yeah.
Because now, modern day stuff, you crouch.
I hate to bust your bubble, but it glitched in my version. I could always crouch into crates.
No, I'm talking about the vents.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I was meant to. I don't know why. Sometimes, but sometimes I could crouch in them, and it would work fine. But if I proned, I couldn't unprone, and I was like, oh wait, it's meant to be prone.
Yeah, but that was interesting. Like there was a definite trade-off in that.
Just being able to prone in general.
That too, but the fact that you could only access areas when you were actually thin, not crouching is still awkward. Like you have to have big vents for that.
Yeah.
Like visually big vents. Not the small ones that we had in this game.
Yeah, and just the sort of want to slow down the gameplay is something that we don't find later on. It seems to just sort of want to encourage you to keep going with these sort of like speeding up the gameplay and then just increasing the amount of abilities you have and stuff like that.
The alternate paths definitely good.
Yeah.
In one of the earlier missions, they start dropping hints as to what the later enemies are like.
Yeah,
Bananas in crates with cages.
and just the sort of uneasiness that some soldiers have to what's going on. I think
Yeah.
that's also a really good detail. Is the binoculars with the you can listen into enemies, which you don't get in later games.
No.
Which is, I feel like the enemies in this one are ironically just like nameless mercenaries, but they have a lot of personality because you could just hear them talk out of like natural happenstance.
Yeah. The only other game I've really seen that in is the Dishonored series,
Huh. Yeah.
where they just talk semi-randomly.
Yeah. I've never thought about. I've played those games a while, but yeah. Yeah. It is something that Ubisoft and even Crytek themselves are sort of kind of lost in a way.
For that, you kind of need to have good writers
Yeah.
and passionate. Like, hey, this will not improve money making at all, but it will make things feel slightly better. Can I have a budget of 2-3 weeks to record audio for this and get it right?
Yeah. I think sadly this game is sort of just a ball of passion that makes the later games seem sort of soulless in a way. Like,
It's
I
Eurojank.
yeah, Eurojunk to the extreme, especially because a lot of a lot of like sources. I haven't seen anyone from Crytek themselves, but a lot of sources state that Crytek really wanted it to be open world,
Mm.
and
And
this
it's
was their
very, very
compromise.
close to that.
Yeah, they wanted 3 or 4 open worlds that you could go to in between.
And actually, that's a key advantage now. Looking back from open world games to that, problem with open world games in general is they can be very, very empty.
Yes, and
And linear helps solve that.
it was such a breath, like a breath of fresh air when you had this massive island, but like the whole thing was just planned out and designed for you to wander across enemies and all that. Kept it a constant tension for a period that's meant to be like very tenseful.
Mm.
Um, I know this is maybe like 20 years later of a game that most people forgot, but Ubisoft, which I know you're listening, if you do just decide to make a direct follow-up to Far Cry 1, in the same vein, I think it would do very well. Because it'd be so different.
Actually, all the games that I consider to have really good open worlds tend to have it locked down as well.
Yeah.
Like another one I would consider would be Deus Ex Mankind Divided.
Yeah. Which
Prague is technically open world. It is dense as fuck. It has multiple layers. And then for missions, you go away often enough to a dedicated
yeah.
area. And then you come back.
I mean, my baby, the Yakuza series, has that sort of thing where it has like a very compact open world with a lot of events into it. Now,
It's empty.
yeah, where my main problem with Odyssey, which is just nothing. There's just so much empty space in between everything.
I know we're going really across different series, but the latest Assassin's Creed Mirage,
Yeah.
I feel it was so close to being like Odyssey and Valhalla in that it's just so spread out. But there are people in that series who fucking love Assassin's Creed, you can tell, because the cities are dense. They have the verticality and twisted alleyways that just make it a pleasure to move around in.
Yeah, and as a Far Cry fan, I feel like that's just missing in the like later Far Cry games.
Purposefulness.
Yeah, it's like I said this before to you, Brendan, but the first three Far Cry games are completely different from each other,
Mm.
and after Far Cry 3, they're all the same. Like Far Cry is just sort of a vague idea of an open world shooter that you can kind of do anything with. But now the popular thing is spawned off. I would just love if they went back to that sort of here's the things we need to do. What's a completely new way we can do it in?
In some ways, Blood Dragon,
Yeah,
Primal,
yeah.
and
New Dawn.
New Dawn, those are the experimental stuff
Yeah.
in
And
many ways.
I think the Ubisoft Montreal really wants to do it. That's why they do these games in between these spin-offs. Yeah, and I Far Cry 3 was a momentum, well, like undefined success at the time. But Far Cry Blood Dragon is the one that got the TV show, you know?
Mm.
Like the sort of experiences stick with me, and if we're saying stick with you, Far Cry 2, for how commercially unsuccessful it was, is really a sort of genre in itself in a way. Like that game is so unique.
A lot of stuff, a lot of experimental stuff in it that didn't get into
The rest,
later games.
but when playing this, I saw it go like the I saw the origins of a lot of this stuff in Far Cry 1, which is very interesting. Yeah.
Actually, that's another thing. The explosions are so satisfying.
Yeah.
You will have stuff fly away from the explosion.
And you'll also have plenty of barrels around with like that you shoot like a board and it rolls downhill. It reminded me of some aspects of Half-Life 2 with just like all the barrels and all the explosives around it.
Have fun with physics.
Yeah. I don't know.
And it makes you feel and clever and smart.
I don't know if you heard of a game called Dark Messiah, but it's
Yeah, of
Yeah.
magic.
yeah. It
Mr.
kind of reminded
Magic.
me of some of that sort of design as well, where they just kind of realized that, you know,
Do you know who made that game?
oh, what was it called again?
Arcane Studios.
Arcane, that's it. RP Arcane,
Same
one of the
folks who
best to do
made
it.
Prey and Dishonored.
Yeah.
I
Even Crytek
Sadly,
themselves
we
have been
won't
like
see
had
that
issue.
again. All of Arcane stuff is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, we should do a funeral episode on our Arcane Studios, and they have one studio still alive, right? Don't they? It's just the other half is closed.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because they're still working on the Blade game. One half is
Blade game?
yeah, they're making a game on the Blade that's meant to coincide with the movie ish. The movie was meant
That
to
could
be
either be fantastic or dreadful. There's
Yeah.
no in between.
yeah, that's what everyone says as well. That's the kind of consensus. But the funny thing is that the movie was meant to come out, but every director keeps leaving, and I think that's mostly because Marvel keeps interfering. So the movie's probably going to be ass.
But the game,
The game could be amazing.
yeah, it could be or it could be dreadful.
It's made by
Because-
Arcane Leon, I think.
Because Blade is a mix of stealth and action.
Yeah. Yeah, or you just make Vampire the Masquerade 2.
No, please no, that's just cursed.
Yeah. I think we should call our final episode, which could be this episode, Vampires of the Masquerade 2. And then you know we're never ever releasing anything ever again. It's the fate doesn't stop us.
Half-Life 3.
You see, I do think they won't release Half-Life 3, but they'll just keep releasing Half-Life products. I think they will actually make like actual Half-Life stuff. The
Oh yeah, they will. Like
Vampire the
Alex is an
Masquerade
example.
is gone. Like there's been a fucking battle royale. I think it could have been unrelated to universe. There's been a fucking VR game, but there's been no just sequel to it. It's just cursed. It's like Disco Elysium.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would genuinely love to see a direct follow up. Oh yeah, for instance, and spoilers for Far Cry 2, except for not spoilers for Far Cry 2, because the story of Far Cry 2 doesn't matter that much, except for the ending. Far Cry 2 basically has like an amoralistic asshole who's a fucking gun smuggler who arms both sides and doesn't really care, and there's like they're gonna kill themselves every way, and that's Jack Carver.
The main guy in this one.
Yeah, basically, basically, Far Cry 1 traumatized him, so he just thinks the value of human life is worthless, pretty much. Far Cry 2 is him dealing with his depression and PTSD from Far Cry 1. So it's not really a sequel in any way, shape, or form.
It is a way to deal with it.
It is a way to deal with it, but gun smuggling for like 10 years, maybe not the best. But I think that would also blow a lot of Far Cry 2 fans' minds as this is actually a sequel, because, yeah, it really has nothing to do with it. And it kind of, not character assassination, but character assassination of Jack Garver, of this sort of just crazy, like, sort of ex-special forces guys.
Then 3 came along and took ordinary guy to maniac.
Yeah, which I think is the perfect sort of like thematic end to the trilogy, because one is this sort of maniac special forces guys who's helping out in this plot. 2 is this realistic mercenary who you realistically could be fighting in the first game, getting caught up in this plot. So he's already used to war, but then he's just like extra on top of that, like getting into it. And then Far Cry 3 is just sort of like real normal person becoming, like, looping back around to Jack Carver. I've heard that sort of circular theory where it just kind of keeps, like, the characters are the thematic end points and start points of each other. And then from 3 onwards, it's just that again. Pretty much, right? Yeah. 4 is the exact same sort of premise. Not like plot-wise, but character-wise, is this sort of outsider coming to this troubled land. 5, I guess, well, you don't have a voice, but I guess you're a sheriff, so you know how to shoot, but you don't really...
5 has prior history.
Yeah, but you don't really have a character, so... Which I think is a major flaw with that game, especially with the ending. It'd be great for your character to react to the ending.
Well, that's why you have New Dawn.
That is true. That is why you have New Dawn. I need to play it.
New Dawn is good. Again, a flip of the formula.
Yeah.
The spin-offs is where the creativity is now.
Yeah, which is kind of... Which is better than not having it. But when we get to Far Cry 6, I feel like even a spin-off of Far Cry 6 just... It just comes out and everybody knows what it is already, which is the exact opposite of how the series starts.
After Far Cry 6, I'm not sure if we'll ever get that.
Yeah. I don't think we
Just
will.
a weird feeling.
I feel like Far Cry 6 could be the end of the series, which...
And they are saying 7's gonna come out, and it does have
true.
element.
But...
but
even with 7, I feel like... Unless they change it, like, the Far Cry 6 did not make that much money. You know? And it's just this sort of petering out of creativity that no one's interested in anymore. And Far Cry 1 was the exact opposite. No one knew what the fuck a Far Cry game was. And then they found this sort of groundbreaking PC shooter.
And thankfully we've got indie games now.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Or you just keep playing Far Cry 2 again and again. Because it's the best game ever.
Until you burn yourself down.
Until you want to end it all, to be honest. Far Cry 2 is not a game that I think is fun, but it's fun, if that makes sense.
It's got good mechanics.
Very good mechanics. And a very, very, very brutally realistic depiction of combat, which I fucking... today's not a Far Cry 2 video. Today is not the Far Cry 2 video I wrote when I was 18, which is 12 pages long. And it's just the first section. Yeah, I was a bit obsessed with Far Cry
Nothing
2.
too I wish came back into other games.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, there's... playing 1 and 2, like, finally playing 1 and 2, you're like, oh my god, how did Far Cry end up being Far Cry like this?
And the fact that you can use your opponents to set traps for other opponents.
Yeah, or just the simple sort of very versatile map layouts. Or just the wacky ass nature of the game. It's so foreign to what the rest of the series has become. Any final words before
No.
camp up here? Would you like, again, would you recommend people play it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend too. I would say get it on sale. I think a tenner is a bit cheap for how old it is, but or maybe not. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna finish it. I'm almost finished the game, and just to see more of those kooky cutscenes. And yeah, and I hope you enjoyed listening to us rant about Far Cry 1
And others.
and others, and just rant in general. This is what we do on a daily basis, and someone said that we should make a podcast, so we are.
No, it was you with the sake.
Yeah, sake is an amazing drink, and I recommend everyone drinks it. Of course, if you're of age and willing
Yuzu
to...
sake was just lovely.
It's so good. If you get one thing from this podcast, buy Yuzu sake. It was genuinely a life-changing experience. Any game you want to play, because you know, I chose this one because of the sort of the progenitor of where Crytek and Ubisoft are now. Anyone that we should have next with? Oh, I'm scared.
I do have one.
Okay.
Okay, so what do you think it might be? You knowing me?
Is it a walking sim?
No.
Okay. Okay. Now we're in the Wild West.
I already gave you a hint earlier.
Oh, one sec. So where we were at? We'll just get hands to cut all this
I
up.
gave you a hint for
Oh, what was the hint, bro?
1998.
1990. Is it XCOM?
No.
I'm so scared, Brendan. I'm so scared.
Okay, so well, I'm not gonna go for the first in the series, but Thief Deadly Shadows.
Brendan, I'm not even joking. I've been wanting to play Thief for years. For years. I know everything about the games. I absolutely love the studio. I absolutely love what they did. I absolutely love System Shock 1 and 2.
You've never played it.
I've never played Thief.
God damn it.
I've never played Thief. Brendan, you know what? I gotta thank you. You know, next time I see you, I'll shake your hand for finally getting me to play Thief.
Have you got it?
I have not got it, but I think it...
Because right now it's on sale for €1.
On Steam or GOG?
Steam.
Yeah, I'll check the GOG. I know the GOG version has New Dark installed. I'll send you the Mandalore video for Thief 1 for how to set it up because New Dark Engine basically fixes a lot of things for modern computers. But yeah, no, Thief, a great game, a great studio. Quoting that Mandalore video, the studio's like Jesus. They weren't they weren't around for long, but they got a lot of stuff done. They created greatness.
Yeah, Thief 1 came out in 1998.
Oh my god.
And this is why stealth in Far Cry 1 could have been better. Because
Yeah, a lot better.
This game came out in 2004, same year. And completely different vibe. Which is why I'm going Deadly Shadows for my choice there, because same year as Far Cry 1.
I did not realize
it has polish.
Did not realize it was that late. Yeah. Yeah, and if you're listening along, all four of you, I recommend that you do at least try the games out while we play them as well, so you have a better idea of what we're doing. Although, if you're nerdy enough to listen to a Far Cry 1 review, I think you're nerdy enough to already play Thief.
Well, to be fair, not really, considering you knew about it but never played it.
Yeah, and speaking directly to the audience, I would recommend that to go out and play these old games, which are sort of mythologized and talked about in scenes presenters, because they're games age, but they age beautifully, I think.
Some do.
Some do, but the games that people talk about as being all-time classics, especially like Thief and I think Far Cry, you can play pretty much with a few aspects and play today, and there's still vibrant communities, especially for Thief. And I do recommend that you do actually go into these old catalogs and play them. And don't be like me that wanted to play Thief for years and only now getting around to it because I forced someone to play Far Cry 1. But
just to confirm about Thief Deadly Shadows, you have a Windows 2000 XP PC, 256 megabytes of system memory.
I don't know about that one.
64 megs of video memory. DirectX 9.
Oh my god.
That's minimum. Recommended. Intel Pentium for 2 GHz or AMD Athlon XP. 512 megabytes system memory. 128 megabytes of video memory. And here's the key thing. Thief Deadly Shadows does not support play on laptop computers.
What? You know I only play on my laptop. It's all over. It's all over.
Yeah, no, you can't play.
That's it, guys. We call it the whole podcast. No, but seriously, guys, if you do want to follow along with us, I can't recommend FIFA just to experience for a year only on Steam.
2 weeks time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Thief 3 Deadly Shadows is the one you want to play?
Yeah.
Yeah. That
same year as Far Cry 1.
That's the third one. I know the third one is not as good as the other two, but it definitely works as much.
It's mechanically as good.
Yeah. And
the story-wise goes off the wheels.
And if you can, I just saw it there. It's on GOG currently on the day we're saying this is recorded. So the 21st of June, and it ends on the 11th of the next month. So it's on GOG for €1.29, and it's on Steam for €1. So a very, very interesting game to talk about, and cheap, and that's what we're gonna try to go for every time. I was gonna say week for week, but we're not doing just week for week. We're doing this bi-weekly.
And Deadly Shadows is pivotal for the stealth genre as a whole.
Yeah, a lot of influence.
Anyway, let's cut it there.
Yeah. So
cut recording anyway.
Yeah. Should I do a little outro or just, listening? And we really hope you enjoyed this episode of Brendan and JJ rant about shit.
And would you kindly tune in next time?
I think it's a good place to end it.